I was listening, and I could hear that I was being judged intelligent. But I couldn't quite understand how an ordinary man's good qualities could become crushing accusations against a guilty man. At least that was what struck me.
Has he so much as expressed any remorse? Never, gentlemen.
Not once during the preliminary hearings did this man show emotion over his heinous offense.
Hey guys, he's a monster. He's a monster. Get that monster. Yeah.
Of course, I couldn't help admitting that he was right. I didn't feel much remorse for what I'd done, but I was surprised by how relentless he was. I would have liked to have tried explaining to him cordially, almost affectionately, that I had never been able to truly feel remorse for anything. My mind was always on what was coming next, today or tomorrow. But naturally, given the position I'd been put in, I couldn't talk to anyone in that way. I didn't have the right to show any feeling or goodwill. And I tried to listen again, because the prosecutor started talking about my soul.
I've peered into his soul, and I found nothing. The truth is, he doesn't have a soul, and there's nothing human, not one of the moral principles that governs men's hearts, that's within his reach. Of course, we can't blame him for this. We can't complain that he lacks what is not his power to acquire. But in this court, the holy negative virtue of tolerance must give way to the sterner but loftier virtue of justice, especially when the emptiness of a man's heart becomes, as we find it has in this man, an abyss threatening to swallow up society.
It was then that he talked about my attitude toward Maman. He repeated what he had said earlier in the proceedings, but it went on much longer than when he was talking about my crime. So long, in fact, that finally all I was aware of was how hot a morning it was.
Tomorrow, gentlemen, this same court is to sit and judge of the most monstrous of crimes, the murder of a father. His callousness inspires in me a horror nearly greater than that which I feel at the crime of patricide. A man who is morally guilty of killing his mother severs himself from society in the same way as a man who raises a murderous hand against his father. I'm convinced, gentlemen, that you will not think it is too bold of me if I suggest to you that the man who is seated here in this dock is also guilty of the crime to be tried in this court tomorrow. He must be punished accordingly. My duty is a painful one, but I must carry it out resolutely. He has no place in a society whose most fundamental rules he ignores, and that he cannot appeal to the same human heart whose elementary response he knows nothing of. I ask you for this man's head, and I do so with a heart at ease. In the course of a long career, I have had occasion to call for the death penalty. Never as strongly as today have I felt my case made easier, clearer, or lighter than today. And by the certain knowledge of a sacred imperative, and by the horror I feel when I look into a man's face, and all I see is a monster.
My head was spinning with heat and astonishment.
Have you anything to add?
I never intended to kill the Arab.
Well, at least that's an assertion. Until now, I hadn't quite grasped the nature of your defense. Before I hear from your lawyer, I'd be happy to hear precisely the motives for your act.
It was because of the sun.
You have the floor.
It's late and we need several hours. Can the trial be reconvened in the afternoon?
Granted.
That afternoon, the big fans were still churning the thick air in the courtroom, and the jurors' brightly colored fans were all moving in unison. It seemed to me as if my lawyer's summation would never end.